Good morning, everyone. My name is Ha Bui, and I'm a coordinator of the pre-pharmacy programming. I would like to thank all our student volunteers and our sponsors, especially the AAMC, for sponsoring our event. It is my honor to introduce our second keynote speaker, Dr. Thomas Menighan. Dr. Thomas Menighan is the Executive Vice President and Chief Executive Officer of the American Pharmacists Association. He received his Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy from West Virginia University College of Pharmacy and an MBA from Averitt College. Prior to joining the American Pharmacists Association, he was the founder of the Syntegra Solutions, Inc. and the SimRx, Inc. His other professional experiences include management of the Pharm Corporation, creator of Rational Med, and development of thecornerdrugstore.com. And he currently serves as a partner in the Pharmacy Associates, Inc. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Thomas Menighan.
Good morning. So I want to first thank the organizers for putting this together. It's an amazing experience, unlike any I've seen, and provides each of you an excellent opportunity to really evaluate what options you might have. In discussions with several folks during the fair yesterday, I really recognized the energy and hunger to learn in this group. You're to be commended for being here in the first place. When I first took my job about 6 years ago, our organization, APHA, which is an association of pharmacists, brings in all sorts of volunteers and elected leaders for various meetings. So we had just gone with a new contract hotel, a Kimpton property right across the river in Roslyn, Virginia, from where I work. And I spent my first night there, and the following morning I was checking out of the hotel. And as I was checking out, I reached up and grabbed a cookie on the counter and popped it into my mouth and started to chew and realized grain and liver aren't what you really expect in a cookie, and I realized it was a dog biscuit. So not wanting to look too uncool, I went ahead and finished it off. It was dry and not particularly savory, but the second one wasn't too bad. A wise man once said that you don't usually remember what you hear in a speech like this. You don't remember the words, but you do remember how you felt as you listened. And a month or two from now, as you reflect on this and as you're continuing to process what you heard and what your career choices may be, I hope that you walk away feeling like pharmacy could be a pretty good career for you. And if you do pursue that calling, and it is truly a calling, then I hope that you think, wow, I don't remember everything that he said, but maybe that could work for me. And that's why I'm here. I can promise that if you pursue it, you'll have an amazingly rewarding career, as our contributions to healthcare are really exploding today. In one of my conversations yesterday, I heard misconceptions about pharmacy. Hopefully you've been in community pharmacy, but there's so many other types of practice, and hopefully as you toured the fair yesterday, you picked some of them up. Nuclear pharmacy, public health, ambulatory care, hospital, and areas where medication management is enhanced by pharmacists working with patients to manage chronic disease, or how to avoid hospital admissions. If you think the options are narrow, take another look. And to a point that Kathleen made, not only are opportunities varied, but they're growing. The Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts that 25% employment growth will occur in pharmacy by 2020, with the field adding almost 70,000 new jobs. The BLS highlights several factors, including scientific advances, the proliferation of new drugs, the aging U.S. population, the anticipated retirement of older pharmacists. There's opportunity ahead. Now I'd like to sort of turn and describe a concept to you. In physiology, we learn about the fight or flight response. You get threatened, and blood rushes to the brain and the large muscles and away from the GI tract, giving you the opportunity to either fight or run. One example, say you're sitting in class and your professor pulls out a pop quiz. And you think, oh, that's the fight or flight response. Each of you have also experienced what I call a flying leap response. And if I ever write a book, it'll be about this. I define it as a major response to outside stimuli that causes us to change direction or to pursue something we wouldn't have done otherwise. The cause is usually some unexpected comment, often by a peer, that leads to action. The external validation is often essential for us to make the big decisions in life. For example, you're here in part because you're interested in sciences and healthcare, but you probably wouldn't be here without some encouragement from a friend, a parent, or a teacher. And maybe, just maybe, you'll get some validation while you're here that causes you to, that just flips that right switch and causes you to take a flying leap. Before leaving the subject of flying leaps, remember that we're not only the recipients of this incredibly important external validation, but we can also be the donors. If you catch somebody doing something good or somebody being good at something, tell them. You never know, you might just totally change their life for the better. My host for this conference today suggested that you might want to know my story, my path, and how I came to this amazing role as CEO, the hired guy of the American Pharmacists Association, the National Professional Society of Pharmacists with 62,000 members and located on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. In partnership with thousands of volunteer members, we provide information, leadership opportunities, education, and advocacy for pharmacists and pharmacy students. I don't make a habit of talking about myself when there are so many great stories to tell about our members and their practices as pharmacists. But perhaps sharing my story will give you an idea of how varied your options may be in pharmacy, and along the way, you'll catch a few references to my own flying leaps. My path to this role began with a paper route at age 7 in a 2-traffic light river town in West Virginia. With the blessings of 2 great parents and 2 older sisters, we did okay, but frugal was the word in our house. We recycled everything long before that was cool. And they impressed upon me at an early age to save money for college. In addition to delivering papers, I cut grass and even harvested last month's Women's Day magazines from the rear of a local grocery store to sell door to door. The magazines were free, and nobody could resist a red-haired freckled kid who was selling magazines at half price. The sales experience also led to top-selling door-to-door success with our church's St. Patrick's Day raffle tickets. Money for college was earned in various ways, like serving as a lifeguard and washing windows. At age 10, while washing windows for our neighbor, Mrs. Sutton, she asked why I was doing the work. To make money for college, I said. She offered a different perspective. She said I was doing the work to get the windows clean. And the point stuck like glue. It was a valuable lesson to learn, not just to do the work for the money. It's much more rewarding to achieve excellence in our work, and typically when we do that, the money follows. In 5th grade, Christmas brought a chemistry set and a fascination with how things work chemically. Phillips Pharmacy, just up the street from our house, was my source to replenish supplies, and Jim would order whatever was needed for our next experiment. A small group of my friends got proficient in making gunpowder with sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate. No, we weren't terrorists. Remember, this was the pre-video game era. So we had to make our own loud noises. And throwing pipe bombs into the river created an amazing noise and sometimes yielded a catfish. In 7th grade at age 11, Jim hired me as a janitor, a clerk, eventually a delivery guy, and then a pharmacy tech. And so began my pharmacy career. Jim employed me whenever I could show up over those 10 years until graduation from pharmacy school. My view of the pharmacy was totally focused on independent community practice. And that wasn't bad. It lent focus in my pursuit, but there's so much more today. Bill Cosby did a bit a few years ago where he described how every family is dysfunctional. He described one hilarious example after another, but made a serious point. Without going into detail, it's important to develop coping skills early to succeed. We've got to be able to walk out of a negative experience, turn it off, and focus on something positive, or the negativity in this world can eat us up. High school was a positive experience for me, as grades were good and being part of teams in football, basketball, and baseball were awesome. However, early in college, second semester chemistry almost killed me. Physics in summer school helped get my grade average back up, my science average, sufficiently to get admitted to school. When sitting in my first pharmacy school lecture from our dean, he said, "You're now entering a profession where you'll never have to worry about making a living, so worry about making a difference." That resonated with how my parents, Jim Phillips, Mrs. Sutton, my sports coaches, and so many others who I knew lived their lives. In college, work continued at Phillips by hitchhiking the 75 miles from college home for the weekends. On campus, jobs included making signs for university events and working for 3 years as a waiter in a sorority house. Wasn't that glamorous? Involvement in service began in small ways with my fraternity. In pharmacy school, there were talks to high school students on the dangers of drug abuse. That's where I learned lessons about speaking to audiences, and for me, the key was preparation. The Boy Scouts have it right: be prepared. Upon graduation from pharmacy school, a chain hired me to work in Zanesville, Ohio. The goal was eventually to open my own store, but first there were lessons to be learned. After 5 years as a chain pharmacy manager in 3 different cities, we took our life savings and opened the Medicine Shop franchise store with Jeannie, my wife, in Huntington, West Virginia. We left good-paying jobs and took a risk that we could make it work, assured with the knowledge that I could always get a job. And yes, there were several folks who offered just the right external validation and support so that we took that flying leap. For me, this was a realization of a lifelong dream to own my own store. And I thought I'd made it. But it was really just the beginning, as from this point on, my career and life have been a series of unexpected turns. After we left our jobs, but just before we opened the store, we learned that Jeannie was pregnant with our now 35-year-old daughter. Shortly after that, we learned that she'd had a recurrence of an earlier ovarian cancer tumor. So we pursued treatment for her at Duke University, 343 miles away, and I know that because I drove it maybe hundreds of times. Raised our daughter and built our pharmacy practice. Thanks to the invitation of a longtime friend, Frank McClendon, I attended a local association meeting in Huntington to meet other pharmacists in town, and it changed my life. Involvement followed in organizations like the Cancer Society, Red Cross, hospice, and local and state pharmacy associations. My daughter Caroline remembers going to a lot of association meetings. The Medicine Shop was an amazing experience, as important business skills were learned while meeting thousands of patients and watching their kids grow up. We developed new service offerings, conducted healthcare screenings, and grew our practice successfully. But Jeannie's very aggressive cancer treatments left her bedfast and unable to eat. So we started her on a novel program from Duke to feed her at home intravenously with total parenteral nutrition, or TPN. By mixing her solutions on the kitchen counter for 1.5 years, we got her back on her feet while lessons were learned about home care. For example, instead of buying her solutions from Duke, as I did early on, I began buying them from a local hospital supplier through my pharmacy. We learned how to bill our insurance for this unusual outpatient therapy, and due to referrals from discharge planners we met through Jeannie's various admissions, we soon built a home care practice with 2 other partners, including my pharmacist friend Frank and a hospital pharmacist, Harvey. As you may know, while we're the medication experts as pharmacists, we don't typically administer the medications we dispense. So in the early days of home infusion, I delivered the solutions and the supplies, and I taught the caregivers and the patients how to self-administer. So I didn't do the administration, but I showed them how. As we grew, we hired nurses to do the home care, but those early experiences were invaluable in developing a caring approach to my own practice. Jeannie recovered and lived 20 years to see our daughter receive her master's before passing away a few years ago. But she lived an amazing life and made a challenging life experience into something good. The home infusion practice grew as a separate entity with 3 partners, and we spun it off from the Medicine Shop. When I sold the Medicine Shop while I sold the medicine shop 20 years after opening it, we still have CompraCare, which now provides home infusion and specialty pharmaceuticals. Networking with folks in home infusion, not far from here in Chico, California, we became part of another franchise, Option Care, and we're in that franchise for 20 years to enhance our buying power and learn from others' experiences. Networking also led to a road show in the mid-1980s and invitations to speak to pharmacists about this novel new practice, and that led me to APHA, my current employer. But there were numerous turns and twists in those early presentations. Talks around the country introduced me to pharmacists who became lifelong friends and colleagues. And in 1987, APHA hired me on my first tour of duty there as a staffer. So I left my medicine shop and we moved our family to Washington, D.C. I felt much like I did in that chemistry course when I realized association management was not pharmacy practice. I wasn't always successful, as new skills were acquired and mistakes were made. At one point, I was passed over for a promotion. That failure led to another flying leap as I went back to night school to earn an MBA at the urging of a friend. Many years later, it would turn out that I wouldn't have been eligible for this job had I not had that early failure, because I wouldn't have gotten the MBA and I needed an advanced degree to get this job. Thankfully, the perspectives learned in the graduate program helped me manage APHA's membership, public relations, state affairs, and new business. 5 awesome years after joining APHA, an entrepreneur hired me away to lead development for his startup Pharmark and the technology platform known as RationalMed. This program uses big data to manage drug utilization review for state Medicaid programs. The experience exposed me to technology and put into practice our APHA advocacy work that led to the requirement for state Medicaid programs to conduct DUR. Within 2 very intense years, we built RationalMed into a national brand that was eventually sold twice and is now owned by Express Scripts, the largest PBM, pharmacy benefit manager in the world. While this enterprise was successful, there were family challenges that drew us back to smaller environs, and we returned to Huntington and rejoined my partners in Option Care. 6 years later, after continued volunteer leadership in APHA, DC called again to launch a venture-backed business that developed CornerDrugstore.com, which provided websites for independent pharmacies and regional chains. We turned this into a profitable business, but it was never going to meet our VC, our investors' high profit goals. So I recommended to them that we sell, and we did. I found a buyer, and I fired myself. So unemployed at the age of 50, for the first time since I was 7, it was time to reinvent. Now what? For a month, my previously dormant golf game was the answer. Then a colleague offered a gig consulting on a drug information project his organization had with FDA. Another flying leap. It was time to become a consultant. For the next 6 years, consulting paid me to learn stuff for people while making a difference. There were numerous new perspectives on drug information, government programs, information technology, chain operations, risk management programs, and supply chain, in particular, the prevention of counterfeits in the U.S. chain. It was during this time that Jeannie passed away and I remarried. Shortly after, Bonnie and I took in Alex, our then 9-year-old nephew. 10 years later, after surviving a brain tumor, he's attending college. Meanwhile, my daughter Caroline discovered nursing school and is loving it. By 2008, I had a highly successful consulting practice with 12 staff, primarily providing distributor audits and anti-counterfeiting service for 12 major pharma companies around the world. Out of the blue, a friend called, can you see it coming? And asked if I was going to submit my name for consideration as the new CEO at APHA. The former exec, my predecessor and friend, had led the organization for almost 20 years before was retiring. I had given it some thought, but ruled it out as too complicated, uncertain, and I was just afraid to leave my consulting practice, my clients, and the dozen folks I worked with. He persisted, so I turned to Bonnie, my wife, and said, "What do you think?" She said without hesitation, "You know you'd be good at it, and you'd love it." The flying leap response had been reactivated. Then I got good advice from a friend who said, "You know, you'll never have a chance at a job like this again. So don't ever give yourself the excuse that you should have tried harder or you should have been better prepared." And he was right. So while still running Syntegra as CEO, I submitted my name and fully committed to the search process for APHA's new exec with lots of worthy competition and no guarantee of success. 6 years later as CEO, I have this amazing role as Pharmacist's greatest fan. And after 6 years, I've boiled down what we do to 12 words. We promote consumer access and coverage to pharmacist quality patient care services. And thanks to the work of many effective pharmacists and their advocates in the profession you are considering, our profession is blossoming with the new generation of highly trained healthcare practitioners prepared to deliver patient-centered, team-based care. Our profession's star is rising as new schools begin, older ones evolve, and new standards recognize the need for preparing you for expanding roles. Meanwhile, there's growing recognition by the public of our value in helping patients to increasingly complex medication regimens, often for formerly acute, fatal diseases. Our profession provides unlimited opportunity to innovate and to make a difference. Malcolm Gladwell in Outliers describes the 4 necessary elements that all really successful people have had in their life: luck, talent, mentorship, and hard work. Consider yourselves lucky. You're here being exposed to so many new ideas, and you're talented enough to believe in yourselves or for others to recognize. Organizations like ours and the colleges that you attend or will attend can help you with mentorship. That leaves hard work, an essential element in any successful career. If you don't mind hard, fulfilling, meaningful work, pharmacy can be an awesome profession. Whether you pursue research, industry, academia, publishing, long-term care, managed care, hospital practice, or practice in the community, or even association work. The opportunities are endless, but they begin with a caring attitude for patients and a willingness to serve. I picked up some really valuable insights from a network news program about a decade ago. They had researched and described the 7 characteristics of happy people. They include a belief in a higher being, a sense of optimism, good relationships, a sense of control over your life, a sense of contributing to the greater good, a need for lifelong learning, and the notion that while looking for other things, happiness happens. If you think about what you've heard from me this morning, you might judge me to be happy, and you'd be right. If you're interested in reading a short article about the 7 characteristics, you can find me at pharmacist.com or give me a card with your address and I'll send it to you. You could also find all the information you want on HR 4190, the bill that Kathleen referenced earlier. We have a microsite set up that's got all the information that will get pharmacists on the team and in the game in healthcare in a much broader way, initially with Medicare, but with so many other programs at state and private sector. All of us have or will face significant challenge in our lives. We can and should plan, but things don't always go according to plan. So we've got to just keep showing up and throwing ourselves into our work with passion. For me, that passion has been my family and my profession. I can't imagine a better way to make a difference. Today, I'm trying to make a difference by encouraging you to take a flying leap into pharmacy. Do you feel good about a career in pharmacy? Do you buy in that it's a calling to serve? Are you ready to take a flying leap? If so, I've been successful, and that's an awesome feeling. Thanks for being here. You've made my trip from DC worthwhile. Thanks.